You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
Welcome. You are listening to watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. Well, you've seen the things that we've gone through over the past 3 years: pandemics, interruption of supply chains, mass scale rioting, looting, all these things. And you think, well, isn't there insurance for that? And the answer is, under most circumstances, no. But if you listen to the person you're about to hear from, the answer is yes. And you'll get a substantial tax deduction to boot. Person is Clay Ogden. Clay, you are an expert risk manager, and you're an expert in 831B insurance plans. Thank you so much for coming on. First, you got to tell us, what is an 831B plan and why should we care?
Thanks for having me on. The 831B is a section of the tax code that really allows a business owner to take excess profits, excess revenues out of their business and set it aside to build up, surplus or reserves for most oftenly known as, uninsured, uncommon, unforeseen types of risk. As you said, a lot of the things that we've seen over the last 3 years with the pandemic, looking at things like business interruption, maybe supply chain interruptions, legal action being brought against the business, brand and reputation damages, all of these types of risk fall to a business owner to bear the brunt of with after-tax dollars on the bottom line. And so the 831B is really designed to help that specific business owner take those excess profits, take a little bit off the top when they have the opportunity to do so, to now more efficiently protect themselves from these unknown issues when and if they come up, as opposed to just using after-tax dollars out of cash flow. And so it's a way to create some, it's absolutely a risk management tool that has some tax advantages to doing this as well.
All right. So how much can you put aside for these unforeseen events, and how is that treated by the IRS in terms of taxable income?
Yeah. So inside of the 831B, you're able to set aside up to $2.4 million now here in 2022 annually. At SRA, we're going to limit the client as to what they can set aside based off of gross revenues. It's going to be up to 10, sometimes in some situations up to 15% of gross revenues. And then we will always, as the insurance, the 831B admin, be able to make sure that we're keeping in check what we're able to have that business set aside related to their gross revenues, related to their risks, related to their industry, that kind of thing. That's what our job is to set this up and manage it for the client. So anything that goes in that's set aside is tax deductible to that business. When those policies are issued, let's say it's a 12-month policy, or the funds are going to be set aside. Once those policies expire at the end of that 12-month period, those funds now become available and no longer at risk of a claim. Anything that has not been used for claims purposes is now able to be either deferred into the future, can be invested, it can be taken out and used as claims in the meantime, or it's going to be taken out as a qualified dividend to the shareholders, or a shareholder loan that's going to be loaned to the shareholders of the 831B. Anytime dividends are taken, they're going to be taking those out as a long-term capital gains rate as opposed to ordinary income.
Okay, so effectively you can keep rolling over your so-called premium, and you could keep adding to it as well, correct?
Correct, yes. So you can, when you put funds in now, next year the policies expire. Anything that I haven't used for claims purposes, if there is funds in there, I have three options. I can either take a dividend from it, I can take a loan from it, or I can leave it inside of the 831B, keep it invested, and defer it into the future. Building up those surplus funds in case an event does arise.
All right. So who can do this? If I've got a grocery store, can I do it? If I'm a sole proprietor, LLC, publicly traded corporation? Who does it?
Yeah, we have business owners in any and every industry you can dream of. The cost of our program really has been brought available to any and every business owner to at least evaluate this as something that could apply to them. The industries that have used these programs for the longest are Fortune 500 companies, large enterprises, to one, manage risk, but two, become a little bit more efficient in how they run their business.
All right. And so as far as creditors' claims, if your company's sued, this is insurance, and can it be reached? Is it an asset of the company, or does it have some special status?
That probably gets a little bit more into the weeds, but there is some special status there. There is a little bit more of it can be an asset on the books for the business. It can also be owned by the business owners. It kind of depends. We have some clients that do both. Given your background, we discussed earlier, we have some clients that actually, will have a revocable trust to own it. There's lots of different ways to structure it for planning purposes, whether it be for the business owners themselves or for the business itself.
All right. Sounds pretty neat. And what's the maximum deduction you can take for this?
The maximum annually would be up to 2.4 million. But again, their revenues have got to be, up there to allow that in that 10 to 15% of gross revenues. That's always going to be our ceiling. Anything under that is fine. We just won't allow anyone to eclipse that.
Gotcha. So 10 to 15% of gross revenues, which could be a substantial amount of money.
It can be, yeah. And, we've seen these programs have been validated in a big, big way over the last 3 years.
I'll bet.
With the pandemic. We've seen lots and lots of business owners take the hit on business interruption, political risks, supply chain interruptions. And, I think the frustration has been shared very broadly with business owners around the globe. The fact that traditional insurance isn't covering any of this stuff. And those that have had the opportunity to set funds aside when they could for these very issues, it became a blip on the radar rather than something that was devastating to their business.
Absolutely. So what types of investments can be made in this 831B plan? And effectively, your company acts as like the administrator, I guess?
We do, yes. Yeah, we'll set everything up. We will be the one to manage it and maintain it. The types of investments that are okay inside of these, year one, while the policies are in place, liquid type investments. So things like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, anything that can be liquidated within 2 to 3 days for potential claims. And then once those policies expire and those funds become surplus, no longer at risk of a claim, then the client can look at things, more illiquid, more long-term type investments. So it's kind of dependent upon whether the funds are at risk of a potential claim or have earned out or become surplus.
Right. And obviously you have actuaries who figured this stuff out, right?
Don't just survive, thrive. The Financial Survival Network.
Torque Resources is an exploration company establishing a portfolio of premier copper gold early stage projects in Chile. Torque's management and technical teams have a strong track record of raising capital, discovery, and monetization of exploration successes. The company's Margarita Copper Gold project is located within the prolific coastal Cordillera Belt in Chile, which hosts some of the world's largest and most profitable copper mines. The Margarita project possesses excellent discovery potential for a major copper discovery due to the strength of the alteration system, large-scale magnetic targets, and the presence of copper oxide mineralization. Drilling is anticipated to begin in Q3 of this year. Torque trades in Canada under TORQ and on the OTC under TRBMF. To learn more, go to torqueresources.com. That's torqueresources.com.
This is the Financial Survival Network, the information you need to thrive now more than ever.
Yeah, I mean, that's all part of it, is trying to make sure that we're issuing real risks, issuing policies that apply to a client's business or their industry. We obviously can't issue a policy to anybody for foodborne illness if they don't grow, manufacture, or distribute food.
So
But
eating
there are
food isn't enough of a reason, huh?
what's that?
Just eating food isn't enough.
No, I don't think that would.
coverage.
I don't think that would suffice.
Okay. So, all right. So it's a form of insurance. It's effectively self-insurance, if you will. I mean, there's no pooling of the risk. It's the pool is whatever you put into it, and plus investment income.
No, that there is pooling of risk, actually. So it's interesting that you bring that up. There has to be inside of the 831B tax code. There's a 4-part test that does need to be met, and is really the crux of making sure that these things are done properly. And that 4-part test is really on us as the 831B admin. But what those 4 parts are is making sure that there's a correct transfer of risk. There's a distribution of risk, making sure that the 3rd part of that is that it's fortuitous in nature, things that happen by chance, not ordinary business risks, which is generally in the scope of, traditional insurances. And then the 4th one is making sure that you're following the principles of insurance. And what that means is making sure that you have properly drafted policies, making sure that you have proper investment of those reserves, utilizing the law of large numbers in those pooling or the co-ops. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought that up, because it is an aspect, and this is where we can get more in depth with a client if they are interested in pursuing a little bit more information. But there does have to be a sharing of risk component to utilize or elect under the 831B.
All right. I think I've got the idea here. And speaking of insurance, as we started out, there's a lot of risks that traditional general business liability policy doesn't cover. And you've got a way to cover a lot of risks that would otherwise be excluded from your traditional business policy, correct?
That's correct. Yes. Yeah. We don't issue policies for anything that would, be a traditional business risk or a traditional insurance. A lot of our policies are going to be centered around loss of income, business interruption, lawsuits, covering audits, political decisions, data breaches. There's, we have lots of different policies that cover things for like ransomware, phishing, malware, lots of issues that are becoming more prominent here in 2022. Look at things like third-party business interruption, or maybe an EPLI policy, an employee bringing legal action on the employer, maybe loss of a key employee due to an accident or illness. And then we have programs that also exist for things like custom warranties, service contracts. We work with a lot of people in the dental space, and we have different programs that are very applicable across the board for maybe like a deductible reimbursement policy for a company that has the ability to raise their deductibles because they have a very good loss ratio or claims ratio. Raise their deductibles to save on some premiums, and this can be a way to more efficiently run a scenario like that. So there's lots of applications, lots of different business owners that can potentially use this or look at this. I would say our client base ranges in size from clients right around 750,000 all the way up to a couple $100 million. But I'd say the bulk of our clients are kind of in that $1 million gross revenue to $30 million gross revenue.
Okay. Well, really, really interesting here. I know that if you've got any kind of business, you're always questioning A, how much insurance costs, and B, is it really worth it? And let's face it, you got to have it, just like you wouldn't drive a car out of the garage without it, I hope. Then you shouldn't be in business without insurance. And then that's basic insurance, but then the specialty insurance to cover you for risks. I mean, there is such a thing as being an insurance junkie, where you just cover way too much. You just carry way too much excessive coverage. Right.
Yeah.
But everybody's different, right?
Yeah. And I mean, the beautiful thing about these programs is, all of these risks that we help a business owner cover are things that they are going to manage 100% on their own right now. Mm-hmm. And so if we can bring a little bit more efficiency to handling that very same risk, whether they use a program like this or not, and create some tax benefits potentially at the same time. Everyone struggles with insurance, or they get frustrated with insurance because they spend money. And if they don't have claims, those dollars are spent. Inside of a program like this,
a total waste. It's a total waste of money, Clay, right? I mean, why am I paying all this money? Right?
It is, right? And that's how business owners view it. And that's why inside of these types of programs, we're covering things that they can be devastating to a business, but you're literally taking excess revenues out of your business, setting it aside into an entity that you own. And if you have claims, that's what those dollars are earmarked for. They're set aside for that very purpose. If you don't have any claims, the dollars are sitting inside of your entity, and they're literally yours to use as you wish moving forward. So it's basically setting them aside, building a war chest of funds for that inevitable event that's going to take place at some point. So it's not a spent and gone and never see it again. It's I'm going to set this aside to manage this potential risk. And if it doesn't take place inside of that policy period, then I have the option to still use those dollars or do something with them moving forward. So.
I gotcha. And I find the whole thing really fascinating because let's face it, so much of what we do, there's risks for everything. And you got to find a balance. Like I'll give you, for instance, I'm in South Florida. Well, South Florida just happens to have the highest level of unlicensed drivers and uninsured motorists out there. All right. It's like nobody beats us when it comes to that. And, we're in a class all by ourselves. So the one thing that I look at is uninsured motorist coverage, right? I won't literally leave home without it, right?
Yeah.
Just makes sense. So in a riskier world, you got to look and reassess your risks, and hopefully you will be able to come to an affordable conclusion. And if you can pay the money and yet hold on to it and get a tax deduction, then what else do you want here? So Clay, just tell us how we contact you, how we find out more about what you're doing.
Yeah, anybody can go to our website at 831b.com. They can always reach out to myself or my team. My email is Clay, CLAY, at 831b.com. Our website's an amazing, it's been rebranded last year. It's got a ton of information. It's very informative on our program and the 831B tax code in general. So I think that would be a really good place to start.
Yes, couldn't agree with you more. If you got a question for Clay, if you're looking perhaps for another deduction for the coming year, because it's going to be a great year, hopefully for all of us, then you should send me an email to kl@kerrylutz.com. Don't forget, go to the site, financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Get your free newsletter. Clay, it's been a pleasure. And hey, if you got any new services, policies that come up, please don't hesitate to call me.
Sounds great. Thanks, sir.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.